The Olubadan of Ibadanland, Oba Owolabi Olakulehin, has joined his ancestors, and the people already know who his successor is without consulting the Ifa oracle. David Olamide writes, Ibadan, the land of brave hearts, who take pleasure in waging war, offspring of combatants. J.P. Clark celebrates the city's brown roofs, Ibadan, land of warriors, and I'm a proud daughter of Ibadan. Thankfully, these warrior founders of Ibadanland had foresight in gifting their future generations a structured system of governance, a foolproof succession plan that has ensured peace and eliminated drama. Unlike other kingdoms in Yorubaland, there are no ruling houses in Ibadan. There are only two ruling lines that take turns to ascend the throne. There is a civil line that produces the Otun Ibadan and the military line that produces the Balogun. According to the Nation newspaper, an Olubadan must climb 23 chieftaincy steps from either of the two lines. And this is why Olubadans are advanced in age when they ascend the throne. That may be the reason there is no drama around the throne. Over time, the chiefs acquire a high sense of community, responsibility, and have immense social capital and social network that they deploy to traditional governance. The monarchs are respectable, insightful, wise, and genuinely interested in the development of the land. Like the British monarch, the Ibadan monarchy is rooted in culture and high regard. For the Olubadan, culture becomes a foundation, a tool, an instrument, and a driver for change and sustainable development. The late former governor Ajimobi of Oyo State tried to change the system in a white paper on the review of the existing Olubadan of Ibadanland chieftaincy declaration published in the Government Gazette in August 2017. It reduced the length of the ladder to 11 steps on the civilian line and 12 steps on the military line. It promoted those along the succession line into kings in their domains and gave them crowns. But it didn't quite work. The system survived that manipulation. It was restored by Governor Seyi Makinde in 2022. And now this is the lesson. Imagine if the predictability and orderliness of the Olubadan Ascension protocols applied to the political parties in Nigeria.
That's a very huge imagination. I'm going to start by saying, may the soul of the late Olubadan rest in peace, and condolences to the people of Ibadanland.
Thank you.
When the death of the late Olubadan was announced, due to the prominence of the incoming Olubadan, there was a certain lack of empathy that I observed. Instead of the city to be in mourning, there was like a celebration. There were congratulatory messages flying all around. I feel like as much as, yes, maybe some of you are familiar with his coming to be the next Olubadan, we still need to exert some level of empathy to the people who just lost, their fathers, their grandfather, empathy is very important. I like the clarity involved in succession planning with the Olubadan, the ascension of Olubadan to the throne. But I don't think it can be replicated in politics.
Why not?
We are able to do that. Ibadan people are able to do that because there are clearly defined lines for succession. I mean, clearly defined families. So say we want to have succession planning for politics, say for the president in Nigeria, what would that look like? So I was saying each ward or each local government will nominate 5 people that will go through maybe the 12 levels of 100 levels of whatever.
They start a sort of mentorship
that gets you to the presidential level, and then we'll start eliminating. And then at the end of the day, if it happens to be the Hausas who end up finishing the process, they will say marginalization. If it happens to be the Yorubas, they'll say, oh, the Yorubas are intentionally sabotaging the whatever. So again, Nigeria is so divided for us to have a clear succession planning that is similar to what currently exists in Ibadan.
All right, so beautiful advocacy. I like that you brought out the historical context of this the story of Ibadan.
Right.
And people must understand that Ibadan exists within the old Oyo Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as part of the towns, and it was a specific town that was governed really by 2 rulers. You had the Otun, which was the civil governor, and then you had the Balogun, which was the military governor.
Because essentially Ibadan was a city.
A military city.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So historically, it was a military, and it's a city of warriors actually. You know, so those who think that Yorubas cannot fight,
That's very important to say
Ibadan
at this
actually
juncture.
is the center of that. And the reality was that Ibadan didn't really have a king until the British Empire came. And
The British colonialists.
the British colonialists, sorry.
Yes.
The British colonial, not the British
Language
Empire.
matters.
Because they wanted to be able to have similar leadership structures, you know, the old divide and rule thing, where you have chiefs and obas everywhere, and Ibadan was just an outlier. And so they kind of created the stool of the Olubadan. And, you know, that's how we got this rotational thing between the Balogun and the Otun that we have today. So I think it's good for us to tell our histories, you know, sometimes so that we know where we came from. And it's also very important because there's this tendency that the West have that it was until they came and colonized us that we understood civilization. And that's not true. Because the people of Oyo, okay, had been governing themselves. The people of Ibadan had a governing system that worked. All right? And that's why I say that when we come to Nigeria as a structure, as a social construct itself, where you have different ethnic groups and different social groups, we must have the courage to look at what's the governing system that works for us. Even when you look at the West, the so-called democracy in the West, you'll find out that the democracy in the US is different from the democracy in the UK, it's different from the democracy in Canada. So what you're seeing is that they're applying democracy to what is the reality of their situation. Nigerians must move away from this idea that, okay, in 1960 was the British that colonized us and they gave us independence, so we adopt the parliamentary system. Sometime in 1979, we woke up and said, we like the American type of democracy. What will we like next? The Australian type?
And then we introduced a new president that's absent from the US governance
Exactly.
structure.
So I think that we have to have the courage to review our governing system. And that means we have to look at what we call democracy today and see what fits. This system of governance in Ibadan is close to what we have in China, which is a merit system. That is, you have, before you can get to that committee, that central committee, you know, that communist committee, you know, that elects the emperor in China or whatever. You have to have, you know, ascended,
promoted
place,
one step up to the
other. The
other.
amount of GDP you control already will have been so significant. And so I think that we have to have that courage to review the way we do governance. There's nothing wrong in doing rotational thing along the geopolitical zones in Nigeria, but we just don't want anybody to just, any geopolitical zone, to just throw anybody and say, okay, that should be the president of Nigeria. We want that person to have a track record, you know, and that person to have performed at a certain level to say that it's qualified. And yes, it can be democracy if we are intentional about it.
100% agree, actually, with your points about that. Very insightful, by the way, because I'm here to learn on this topic and I'm learning a lot. But I'm interested. You mentioned that the Olubadans usually are advanced in age, right? So that would be, I guess, in line with the length of time that it takes them to ascend to that position. Something that we see actually play out a lot in African politics is power in the hands of the elderly. So the question is, we see a young monarch in Warri, okay? And is age really an advantage? And is it connected with competency? And, you know, what are your thoughts on that as far as regards to
but I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
Not too young to rule.
Too young, yes, to rule, not to run now. I agree with you that age may not always be a criterion for wisdom and insight. However, you cannot buy experience in the market. If you have advanced 23 levels of leadership before getting there, suddenly you're bringing in something really qualitative. Just as she said, there's quality in the kind of decisions you'll be making. You would have moved from being self-centered to being culture for development, as I advocated in that.
Right.
I mean, and there in the UK, you could tell sometimes that this person is a candidate for the Prime Minister, because then we heard just before Badenoch got there, we heard that she may be a candidate for Prime Minister. She's been a shadow minister, this, that. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think I will start from saying I'm not sure I agree with more barriers to entry in Nigeria. It will just complicate things and politicians will manipulate as
How
usual.
so?
And unfortunately, what you described in your advocacy, and you were wishing it to be replicated in political parties. The only thing that we see being replicated in our political parties is the manipulation that the previous governor wanted to do. But be that as it may, Yinka just mentioned that the British created the office in the first place. So at what point do we say it is political manipulation? Or at what point do we say it is the powers that the executive has? Because there was a system, the British changed it.
I'm not sure of that, though. I haven't read that up.
Okay, and it became the norm. You get my point? So if another political leader comes and makes a change, is it valid? Or
the thing is,
when
late governor...
Culture. I'm getting somewhere. When is it distortion of culture? And when is it executive wisdom? And I'm happy for the Ibadan people that they have this peaceful transition. We can't say the same for a lot of places, especially where I'm from, Taraba State, Takum in particular. There has been long-standing issues with the traditional stool and all that. But yes, at what point is it executive interference, and at what point is it culture?
All right. At what point is it interference, and at what point is it executive wisdom? Predictability doesn't come by chance. It is a product of planning and orderly execution. Hopefully, more monarchies will look at how to be more predictable.
Well, judging by the signs of a quiet revolution in the consumer credit space.